And welcome, and Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So yesterday we started to discuss further the responsibilities of the Kahatites, that is the Levitical family of Kehat. Did we make the bracha? Good Lord. I don't even remember if I said it or not. Well, does anybody remember my saying the bracha this morning?
No, we did not.
Okay, thank you. Oh my gosh, short-term memory. Wow. Thanks, Judith. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So, as I was saying, the Torah is giving us the details of what actually happened when the Israelites were on the march, and they had, of course, the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary. And how did they actually transport it? At least there are a few details here that were given in terms of the process by which they would dismantle the sanctuary and take it into its component parts, and then, of course, transport it to their next encampment. And because the Kohatites they had the responsibility of the very holy objects. They couldn't just march in and start dismantling them. And so here we are reading about how the Cohanim, the priests, actually had to prepare the various materials here, the vessels, etc., the ark and the altars and other items there, and to put them in coverings. And then the Kohatites would come in and then take them. And we get into that a little bit more today. So after having described that a little bit, right, the Torah goes on to say, Al tachritu et shevet mishpachot hakahati. Do not cause to cut off the tribe of the family of Kohatites. So, of course, the Shevet itself was called Levi. It was the tribe of Levi, but it's the family in the tribe, the Levitical family of the Kohatites, the descendants of Kehat, mitoch haleviim, from amongst the Levites. And here we are, the Rashi. Al tachritu, do not cause to cut off. Al tirgamulahem, don't cause them shiyamutu, so that they die. Don't put them in danger, in other words, right? So I think that's the Rashi for this. Let's go on. Vizot asulam. So on the positive side, don't cause them to die, and do this for them instead, understood, right? V'chayu, so that they live, v'lo yamutu, and they do not die. Begishtam et kodesh hakodashim, when they draw near to the Holy of Holies. Aharon uvanav yavu. First of all, Aaron and his sons should come. V'samu otam ish alavodato, and they should assign each one of them on their tasks, at their tasks. Ve'el masao, and to their burden, to what they are to carry. So it's interesting, a little bit of meditating on what's going on here and the significance of it, right? The fact that following the instructions of Aaron and his sons regarding what they had to do would save them from great misfortune. And this whole idea of listening to an expert and allowing an expert to help determine what you're to do is a significant thing, right? The reverse of one of my favorite descriptions of human nature. In other words, ain't no one gonna tell me what to do. And to quite honestly say that part of what I believe is religious discipline is overcoming that particular element of human nature of not wanting to be told what to do. Developing the yin, I guess I could say, right? So let's just see if there's anything else there. Nope. Nope. Just in terms of the Rashi, no. But we are going to take a look. Let's see here. Yeah. Last verse in this Parsha. V'lo yavu, so that they do not come lirot, to see, right? To to look at, right? The Kevala et HaKodesh Vametu, when the holy objects are dismantled. That's the way Safaria translates this. It's a very lovely word. I will discuss that a little bit more. When the holy objects are dismantled so that they die. This is sort of reminiscent of Lot's wife, right? Lot Lot's wife was warned, they were all warned not to look back and watch the destruction of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. And unfortunately, Lot's wife couldn't contain her curiosity, and she perished as a result. And likewise, it's difficult to really perhaps understand fully in this particular case. But the idea here, of course, the dismantling is necessary. The dismantling of these holy objects is something that needed to be done so that it could move to the next stage. But this whole idea of getting some kind of vicarious pleasure from watching the tragedies or the destruction of something else, there's something to think about in this particular little portion here as how it describes it and the consequences of it. So even though we're talking a really far more benign situation and even a necessary situation, but that idea of somehow gaining pleasure from watching others get hurt or something get destroyed. That's just the antithesis of the idea of creation, right? And not to do that. So let's take a look at the Rashi on this. There's a little bit of Rashi. V'lo yavo lerot kevala et hakodesh. So this vala, livloa, is to swallow. Literally, that's what that root means, to swallow up. So they should not come to see when the holy objects, the holiness, the holy things are swallowed, right? So he says, how does that really work? And Rashi explains, letoch nartek shelo. In other words, when it's put into its pouch, when these various objects are put in their pouches. And of course, the pouch is swallowing them up, right? Kamosha Parashti, just as I explained, this is Rashi speaking to us personally, right? Lamala, above, but Parsha, so in this Parsha, where it says, he's quoting now from the Torah, Ufrasu alav beget luni, when it says that they should spread over that particular item a certain cloth, right? Vikisoto, and they should cover it b'michseploni, with a certain type of covering, uvluah shelo, and it's being swallowed uchisuyav, I think is how we would pronounce it, right? That is what we're talking about. In other words, by the covering of it is it's being swallowed. And that is it for the Parsha with the Rashis of Parshat Bamidbar. And so next time we get together, we'll go back to Torah Tamima and continue there where we left off with Torah Tamima. So with the time, I'm going to stop the share here and ask if there are any comments on what we just did. Any thoughts? Any comments? Just some interesting sort of side lessons there. Yeah.
Lot's wife turning around and being petrified is also Peshat, right?
Say that again.
It's the simple Lot's wife turning around and being petrified is also should be interpreted as metaphor.
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, people have struggled to try and translate that, literally, that she became a pillar of salt. I do see it more as symbolic. Again, if we're willing to understand that the Torah speaks in literary terms, then it's not so much a problem. But this whole idea of us watching others be destroyed, even as they are wicked, it is considered to be a really bad quality. And in fact, there's a beautiful interpretation. I think if I'm not mistaken, it's Rabbi Yochanan who says that the window that Noah was told to put in the ark was actually a jewel that refracted the light and that you couldn't really see out of it. And Rabbi Yochanan basically saying that if it were a regular window, then the people in the ark could look out and see how the rest of these people were being destroyed by the floods, and that was so that it was purposely made in a way that it would refract the light, and you wouldn't be able to see through it. It wouldn't be something where you could go, as you can with a window, look through it and see what's going on outside. So we already see that anticipates this whole issue of Lot's wife. It's a great lesson in terms of our judging others, or somehow feeling good about watching the destruction of others. It's not something in which to take pleasure. It is, as you might say, a necessary evil. But for us to somehow enjoy watching others get destroyed, even if they deserve it, is just anathema.
I've heard it explained differently. Lot's wife,
Mm-hmm.
I've heard it explained that she was looking back at her old life, and that's why she was destroyed, because she
Yeah.
was,
Mm-hmm. I
yeah,
hear you. I hear you. Yeah, I I think that it's certainly, a way in which one might interpret it, but my sense is that the reason she was really punished was that, she herself wasn't so great that she should go and get some pleasure out of watching others get destroyed.
that's
It's
very
it's
good.
it's an interpretation, but I don't think it necessarily, discounts the idea that you just shared, you know, about somehow longing for it. But the truth is, she was watching those cities basically experience atomic,
Right,
destruction.
right.
So, yeah. But I think it's also a great lesson for us in ourselves, because it's always a temptation. I like to say, my best sermon is when I'm criticizing everybody else, you know, instead of myself. And that's where we have to focus. So, all right. So, short session today, unless anyone has anything else they want to just comment on. Uh, I mentioned yesterday, of course, how the Book of Numbers in some ways is a tragic book, but this is sort of actually very interesting, the whole way in which Parsha of Bamidbar, the opening chapters of the Book of Numbers, start up about the organization of the camp and the way in which uh, they're of course the reason they're counting men only 20 years old and up is obviously because they're going to be forming the armed forces. They're going to be the people who are going to have to do the fighting, etc. And this is the age you know, of going and joining the army. And that's why it's a very specific counting and not just a universal census.
Mm.
But of course, all that works negatively ultimately. It doesn't, that in itself isn't going to guarantee they're going in. So get some very deep ideas that come out of this.
So
So,
it's Genesis tomorrow?
yes,
Okay.
let me just stop there.